What if everything you've been told about managing debt is actually keeping you trapped in financial servitude? What if the very idea of mastering debt is the most dangerous delusion the financial industry has ever sold you? Here's a truth that might sting. The moment you accepted that owing money is normal, you stopped building wealth and started decorating your own financial prison. And here's the really uncomfortable part. You probably don't even realize the bars are there. Let me ask you something. Has this ever happened to you? You calculated the numbers, ran the spreadsheets, convinced yourself that borrowing at a low interest rate to invest at a higher return was smart money management. Maybe you even felt a little proud, like you'd cracked some secret code that separates the financially savvy from the financially naive. But here's what they don't tell you in those glossy finance courses and best-selling books about leverage. That feeling of control is an illusion, and it's one of the most expensive illusions you'll ever buy. For nearly a century, some of the brightest minds in finance have watched this same pattern repeat itself. Educated people, successful people, people who should know better, systematically destroying their financial futures with debt they genuinely believed they could manage. They call it leverage. They call it financial optimization. They call it using other people's money intelligently. But strip away the sophisticated vocabulary, and what you're really looking at is legalized self-delusion, and it compounds just as powerfully as the interest you're paying. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, here's where things get interesting. If you're currently debating whether to invest your money or pay off your debts, you've already made a critical mistake, and you probably don't even know it. You've normalized the idea of owing money. You've accepted it as a permanent fixture in your financial landscape. And that acceptance, that subtle shift in your thinking, is exactly how financial disasters begin, one seemingly rational justification at a time. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely upend everything you think you know about building wealth. See, there's this pervasive belief that debt is harmless if you use it wisely. People look at their mortgage, their student loans, their business credit lines, and they think, this is cheap money. I'm getting higher returns elsewhere. I'm winning. But what they don't realize is they're not winning at all. They're juggling fire while standing in a room full of gasoline, and the smartest investors who've ever lived, the ones who actually sleep well at night, they don't sleep better because they own great stocks. They sleep better because nobody owns them. And that distinction, the difference between owning assets and being owned by obligations, is where the real story begins. Here's the hidden truth that nobody wants to acknowledge. You cannot build rational wealth while carrying an irrational burden on your back. It's impossible. Not difficult, not challenging, actually impossible. Because debt doesn't just take your money, it takes something far more valuable. It takes your ability to think clearly. It hijacks your decision-making process at the most fundamental level. Think about it. When someone else controls your next paycheck, when your monthly obligations dictate your choices before you even make them, can you honestly call yourself free? Your portfolio might look impressive on paper, your investment returns might beat the market average, but if you're constantly calculating what you owe instead of what you own, you're not building wealth. You're building a sophisticated cage. And this is where the real transformation needs to happen, in your mindset around what wealth actually means. Debt fundamentally rewires how you think. It forces immediate decisions when you should be thinking long-term. It kills patience, and patience in investing isn't just helpful, it's oxygen. Without it, you suffocate. Yet people brag about beating the market while carrying high-interest loans, completely oblivious to the absurdity of their situation. It's like bragging about how fast you can swim while your pockets are full of rocks. You might move impressively for a while, but the math is brutal and unforgiving. Eventually, inevitably, you sink. Our grandparents understood something we've forgotten. During the Great Depression, people didn't theorize about debt. They lived its consequences. They understood pain in a way that kept them financially alive. They feared debt the way you'd fear disease, and that fear wasn't irrational paranoia. It was survival wisdom earned through collective suffering. But somewhere along the journey from then to now, we've completely flipped the script. Today we treat debt like a vitamin. Everybody takes it, nobody thinks it'll kill them, and we've built entire industries around convincing you that borrowing is not just acceptable, but necessary for success. The impact of this cultural shift cannot be overstated. If you want more straight talk about building real wealth and freedom, hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more we need to cover together. Debt doesn't kill fast. That's what makes it so insidious. It doesn't announce itself with a crisis or a catastrophe. It kills quietly, gradually, eroding your financial foundation one payment at a time until your luck runs out. And your luck will run out. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but the revelations always come. The market correction happens, the unexpected expense arrives, the job situation changes, and suddenly that manageable debt becomes an anchor dragging you under. Now, I want to go even deeper into this concept of what debt actually does to your brain and your future, because the mathematics here tell a story that most people never bother to examine closely enough. Write in the comments, "I see the trap now." Let's call this what it really is. When you invest with borrowed money, you're not investing. You're gambling dressed up in fancy clothes. You're wearing a tuxedo to the casino and calling it a business meeting. The only meaningful difference between a gambler at a poker table and a leveraged investor at their computer is self-awareness. The gambler knows they're gambling. The leveraged investor has convinced themselves they're doing something sophisticated, something strategic, something that separates them from the reckless masses. But the behind-the-scenes reality is identical. You're betting on outcomes you cannot control with money you don't actually have. And here's the part that should terrify you. Leverage has wiped out people 10 times smarter than you or me. Intelligence offers no protection whatsoever from compound stupidity. In fact, intelligence often makes it worse because smart people are exceptionally good at rationalizing terrible decisions. The mathematics here are brutal and unforgiving. Debt compounds against you with perfect, relentless discipline. It doesn't take holidays, it doesn't feel sympathy, it doesn't care about your circumstances. Whether compounding works for you or against you, it operates with mechanical precision. 24 hours a day, every single day. And there's a fundamental principle that governs all successful wealth building: never interrupt compounding unnecessarily. Debt is the ultimate interruption. It's not just a speed bump on your financial journey, it's a parasite actively feeding on your future, extracting value before you ever have a chance to build momentum. But people don't see it this way, because they've fallen into what I call the projection trap. They run their calculations, they build their spreadsheets, and they convince themselves that their 3% debt will easily be covered by their 7% investment returns. The math looks clean on paper, so they assume the path ahead is clear. But this entire mindset ignores the most important question. What happens when reality doesn't match your projections? What happens when that 7% return disappears? What happens when your carefully selected investments drop 40% in a market correction? What happens when you lose your job next month, or your business slows down, or an unexpected expense obliterates your carefully constructed financial plan? Here's the revelation that changes everything. Debt doesn't care about your projections. Debt doesn't negotiate based on your optimism. Debt doesn't pause while you figure things out. It collects, always, regardless of circumstances, indifferent. to your explanations. Your lender wants their payment next month, whether the market is up, down, or sideways, whether you're employed or unemployed, whether your confidence is high or shattered. The transformation that needs to happen in your thinking is this. You need to stop treating best-case scenarios as likely outcomes and start understanding that worst-case scenarios are not just possible, they're inevitable at some point along your journey. The impact of this single shift in perspective cannot be overstated, because once you truly grasp this, your entire approach to building wealth changes. But there's an even deeper layer to this that most people never examine, and it has to do with what debt does to your relationship with time itself. Write in the comments, reality doesn't negotiate. People overcomplicate this because complexity makes them feel intelligent. They build elaborate financial models, they analyze scenarios, they optimize and re-optimize, searching for some sophisticated strategy that will magically make owing money work in their favor. But here's the truth that cuts through all the noise. This isn't complicated enough to need sophisticated analysis. You don't need a spreadsheet with 17 tabs to tell you what's right. You need common sense. And common sense says if you owe money, pay it off. If you're free, stay free. It's that simple, that direct, that unambiguous. And here's something most people never realize. Freedom compounds better than any stock you'll ever own. It doesn't show up on a balance sheet. It doesn't generate quarterly reports, but its impact on your life is exponential. Because we need to redefine what wealth actually means. This is where the real transformation in mindset needs to happen. Wealth isn't measured by how much you make. It's measured by how little you owe. Think about that distinction for a moment. You can earn 6 figures, 7 figures, even 8 figures, but if your obligations are nearly equal to your income, you're not wealthy. You're a high-earning prisoner. When you owe nothing, every single dollar you earn belongs entirely to you, not to the bank, not to credit card companies, not to your past mistakes, to you. True wealth means controlling your time, controlling your decisions, and most importantly, controlling your peace of mind. So before you chase the next investment trend, before you follow some guru's latest strategy, ask yourself this fundamental question. Are you building freedom, or are you just decorating your prison? Are you actually moving toward independence, or are you just rearranging the furniture in your cage? If this shifted your perspective even slightly, leave a like. It helps this message reach people who need to hear it. Let me show you the arithmetic that nobody wants to acknowledge. Money isn't emotional. Despite what the self-help books tell you, it's pure arithmetic, cold and indifferent. If you owe $10,000 at 15% interest, that's a guaranteed $1,500 annual loss. You cannot diversify that away. You cannot hedge it. You cannot invest your way around it. It's a mathematical certainty working against you every single day. Now here's the challenge. Show me a guaranteed 15% positive return without significant risk. You won't find one, not legally, not ethically, not reliably. This reveals the hidden truth about debt. Its certainty always works against you. Your investments might go up, they might go down, they might stagnate for years. But your debt compounds with perfect discipline, extracting its pound of flesh regardless of market conditions, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of your optimism. The journey from debt to freedom isn't about finding clever strategies to balance the two. It's about recognizing that they cannot coexist in a healthy financial life. One feeds on the other, and debt always wins that battle because it has time and mathematics on its side. What most people don't understand is how this impacts not just their money, but their entire decision-making process and their ability to seize opportunities when they actually appear. Write in the comments, freedom over everything. This is where things get almost comedic, if it weren't so tragic. Thousands of people obsess over their portfolio allocation, while debt interest quietly eats them alive from the inside out. They'll spend hours debating whether they should shift 5% more into Apple or reduce their Tesla position, analyzing charts and reading analyst reports, convinced they're making sophisticated financial decisions. Meanwhile, their credit card balances are compounding faster than either of those companies will ever grow. That's not investing, that's intellectual theater. It looks smart, it feels smart, it uses all the right vocabulary and follows all the conventional patterns, but it's fundamentally foolish. It's the financial equivalent of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic while ignoring the massive hole in the hull. Because here's the metaphor that makes this crystal clear. You don't fix a leaking boat by buying a faster engine. You don't address structural damage by adding horsepower. You fix the hole first, always, without exception. Debt is the hole in your financial ship, and every dollar you pour into investments before patching that hole is just water displacement. You might move faster temporarily. You might create the illusion of progress. But you're fundamentally compromised. Investing before eliminating debt means rowing toward the iceberg at higher speed. You'll get there faster, but the destination remains catastrophic. Sure, the market might average 10% returns over decades, but here's what the cheerleaders never mention. Most people lack the stomach to endure 50% crashes without panicking. And when you're carrying debt, you don't have the luxury of staying calm during those crashes. Because your obligations don't pause for market corrections. The hidden truth here is that when you owe money, you're locked into a race you probably don't even realize you're running. It's a race between compounding interest and compounding wisdom. On one side, your debt grows with mathematical precision, relentless and tireless. On the other side, hopefully, your financial intelligence grows through experience and learning. Most people lose this race catastrophically because they fundamentally underestimate how fast stupidity compounds. Bad decisions don't just add up linearly. They multiply, they interact, they create second and third order consequences that accelerate your financial decline. You can't think clearly when the meter's running, when every day brings you closer to the next payment deadline. This is the transformation that needs to happen in how you understand your own psychology. Debt taxes your mind before it ever taxes your wallet. It creates a constant background anxiety that corrupts your decision-making process at the most fundamental level. The impact isn't just financial, it's cognitive, emotional, existential. You become a different kind of thinker, a different kind of decision-maker, and not in a good way. What this really means is that your ability to make rational choices about anything, not just money, but career decisions, relationship choices, life direction, becomes compromised the moment you accept ongoing debt as normal. Write in the comments, "I'm fixing the hole first." When you're under financial pressure, something fundamental shifts in how you make decisions. You stop making smart choices and start making urgent ones. There's a massive difference between these two modes of thinking, and debt forces you permanently into the wrong mode. You sell investments early because you need liquidity now. You panic late because you couldn't see the warning signs through the fog of anxiety. You start praying for miracles instead of executing rational strategies. That's not investing, that's survival gambling with a portfolio. And here's the devastating reality. Even a little misfortune can completely destroy you when you're leveraged. A minor setback becomes a catastrophe. A temporary problem becomes permanent ruin. This is why the behind-the-scenes statistics reveal something most people never realize. More investors are ruined by debt than by bad stock picks. Bad investments teach you lessons. Debt teaches you despair. If you truly understood the mathematics at play here, you would treat high-interest debt exactly like a burning house. You wouldn't stand there analyzing the architecture, admiring the craftsmanship, debating the historical significance. You would escape immediately, instinctively, without hesitation. even if it means delaying your grand investing dreams, even if it means looking less sophisticated than your peers, even if it means admitting you made mistakes. The right answer is completely obvious. It's just inconvenient, and people despise inconvenient truths more than they fear actual danger. We'd rather maintain a comfortable delusion than face an uncomfortable reality, even when that reality could save us. The transformation required here isn't financial, it's psychological. You need to develop an immediate visceral reaction to debt the same way you'd react to physical danger. Let me make this absurdly clear with a question that should answer itself. When someone asks whether they should invest their money or pay off 20% credit card debt, what they're actually asking is whether they should drink water or gasoline. One sustains life, the other destroys it, and no amount of clever reasoning changes that fundamental truth. Paying off debt provides the best risk-free return you will ever find in your entire investing journey. Ever. There is no stock, no bond, no real estate deal, no cryptocurrency, no business opportunity that offers you a guaranteed 20% return with zero risk. It doesn't exist in the legal markets, so when you have high-interest debt, you're literally sitting on the single best investment opportunity available to you, and you're ignoring it to chase inferior options. Yes, it's boring. Paying off debt doesn't come with exciting stories for dinner parties. It doesn't make you look like a financial genius on social media. But you know what else is boring? Staying solvent, sleeping through the night without anxiety, having options, when everyone else is desperate. And boredom becomes incredibly valuable the moment a margin call arrives and destroys everyone who thought they were smarter than arithmetic. What people fail to grasp is that this isn't really about money at all. It's about the kind of life you want to build and the kind of person you're capable of becoming when your mind isn't constantly calculating obligations. The best investors who've ever lived, people like Warren Buffett who've built generational wealth, never viewed debt as a leverage tool to be mastered. They viewed it as a virus, something you contain early in its life cycle, or it spreads through your entire financial system until it kills you. This isn't metaphor, it's an accurate description of how debt behaves in a financial life. And here's the distinction that changes everything. The person without debt can wait for opportunity. They can be patient, selective, strategic. They can sit through market crashes and buy when everyone else is selling. The person with debt cannot wait. They must beg for opportunities. They must act out of desperation rather than strategy. They must take whatever the market offers because they have no choice. And markets, throughout all of history, have never rewarded beggars. They reward the patient, the prepared, the psychologically free. What happens behind the scenes in your mind when you carry debt is something most people never consciously recognize. Debt rewires your brain at a fundamental level, and this rewiring happens regardless of your intelligence. Some of the most brilliant people lose their intellectual edge because they're constantly calculating what they owe instead of what they own. Your entire world shrinks. Every decision becomes defensive rather than offensive. You stop thinking about opportunity and start thinking exclusively about survival. You stop asking, what could I build, and start asking, how do I make it through this month? That's not freedom. With modern conveniences, that's servitude with Wi-Fi. It's slavery wearing business casual and carrying a smartphone, but the chains are just as real even if they're invisible. People love to say that debt is just a tool, and technically they're right. But debt is a tool the same way a chainsaw is a tool, incredibly useful in skilled, careful, experienced hands, and absolutely catastrophic in careless ones. And here's the uncomfortable revelation. Most people are financially careless. They don't mean to be, they don't think they are, but their behavior reveals the truth. They buy cars to impress neighbors who aren't even paying attention. They stretch for houses they cannot comfortably afford and then retroactively call it an investment to justify the decision. They normalize debt because everyone around them has normalized it, because the entire economy seems designed to encourage it, because saying no feels like missing out. Then they wonder why they feel trapped, why success feels hollow, why their income never seems to be enough no matter how much they earn. The impact of this normalized carelessness compounds over years and decades until you wake up one day and realize you've built an impressive-looking life that you don't actually control. The transformation that's needed isn't about becoming smarter with debt. It's about recognizing that the game itself is rigged against you from the start, and the only winning move is refusing to play. Write in the comments, "I refuse to play." There's an iron rule of life that operates with absolute consistency, and it's this: you get what you deserve. Not what you hope for, not what you dream about, but what your actions actually merit. If you constantly borrow, if you perpetually live beyond your means, if you normalize owing money as a permanent condition, then what you deserve is anxiety. Not occasional worry, but deep, persistent, corrosive anxiety that eats away at everything else in your life. Something profoundly destructive happens when you owe money that goes far beyond the financial arithmetic. It eats at your independence in ways you don't immediately recognize. It changes how you talk to your boss because you can't afford to lose your income. It makes you tolerate intolerable situations, bad relationships, toxic work environments, compromised values, because you need the stability to make your payments. It teaches you rationalization instead of resistance, and over time you become someone you never intended to be, someone whose decisions are made by fear rather than choice. And this brings us to something most people completely misunderstand about living within your means. This isn't about virtue. It's not some moral superiority. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's practical wisdom, pure and simple. You cannot build good judgment in a mind that's under constant pressure. It's functionally impossible. You need mental space to think clearly, to process information properly, to make decisions based on what's actually best rather than what's immediately necessary. Debt rents out that mental space to someone else, leaving you mentally bankrupt even as you frantically pursue financial goals. The impact here is that you become a worse thinker, a worse decision-maker, a worse version of yourself across every domain of life, not just finances. This is why people carrying significant debt make such absurd investment decisions. They're not stupid, they're desperate, and desperation masquerading as strategy looks identical to genuine stupidity from the outside. They chase speculative stocks that promise quick gains. They panic buy cryptocurrency during bubbles. They listen to television personalities shouting about hot stocks and quick returns as if volume equals credibility. And through it all, they tell themselves the same story. I just need one good win. One big score that makes everything else irrelevant. That's not investing. That's desperation with a spreadsheet. It's financial panic disguised with analytical tools and dressed up with investment vocabulary. But underneath, it's just a person drowning and grabbing at anything that looks like it might float. The journey from rational investor to desperate gambler happens gradually, almost imperceptibly, until you wake up one day and don't recognize your own decision-making process. What creates this transformation isn't a character flaw or lack of intelligence. It's the systematic erosion of mental clarity that debt creates as a byproduct of its existence in your life. Write in the comments, mental clarity first. Here's the cruel irony that defines most people's financial lives. Those carrying debt often work harder than anyone else. They're dedicated, disciplined, relentless in their efforts. But here's the hidden truth. All that effort, all that energy, all those extra hours and sacrifices, they're compounding for someone else. Their time literally becomes the bank's interest. Income. They're running on a treadmill at maximum speed, and every step they take generates profit for their lenders while they remain exactly where they started. The bank never gets tired, never takes a day off, never stops collecting. And here's what nobody tells you: you cannot buy peace of mind on credit. You can only rent it temporarily, and the rental price keeps increasing until the bill arrives and shatters whatever illusion of stability you'd constructed. This brings us to one of the most dangerous lies in modern financial thinking: the distinction between good debt and bad debt. People obsess over this categorization as if labeling something changes its fundamental nature, but this entire framework misses the point completely. Both are dangerous. One might kill you slowly while the other kills you quickly, but neither allows you to sleep well at night. The mindset shift required here is recognizing that the goal isn't managing debt more intelligently. It's removing financial anxiety entirely so you can build actual wealth. Every single dollar of debt you eliminate isn't just a financial transaction, it's one less chain on your mind. And a free mind, a mind that isn't constantly calculating obligations and contingencies, is the ultimate compounding machine. It can think creatively, act strategically, wait patiently, and seize opportunities that a pressured mind would never even notice. Let me share something from personal experience that illustrates this perfectly. Early in my career as a young lawyer, I had very little money. My bank account was modest, my possessions were minimal, but I had something infinitely more valuable. I owed nobody anything. That independence was dangerously advantageous in ways that took years to fully appreciate. The ability to walk away from bad deals without fear, the power to say no when everyone else had to say yes, the freedom to wait for the right opportunities instead of grabbing at whatever appeared. These capabilities proved more valuable than any leverage ratio could ever provide. This is the hidden return on debt elimination that never shows up in financial calculations, but determines the entire trajectory of your life. The transformation happens not in your portfolio, but in your psychology, in your decision-making capability, in your fundamental relationship with choice and possibility. And once you experience this kind of freedom, the idea of voluntarily surrendering it for any amount of leverage becomes unthinkable, almost absurd, like trading oxygen for the promise of running faster. Write in the comments, independence is everything. The real revelation about paying off debt has nothing to do with interest rates or portfolio optimization. The true return is psychological, and it operates at a level most people never even consider. When you eliminate debt, you restore something precious that you didn't even realize was missing: your ability to wait. And patience, genuine patience, is the rarest and most valuable form of intelligence in investing. It's not about being smart enough to spot opportunities. It's about being psychologically stable enough to wait for the right ones and pass on everything else. This is where your entire journey diverges into two completely different paths. Your goal determines your outcome, and you have to choose: do you want to look rich or do you want to be free? Because if you choose the first, if you optimize for appearance and status and keeping up with whatever your peer group is doing, then the second never happens. You can have one or the other, but the pursuit of looking wealthy actively prevents you from becoming actually free. And here's what makes this so frustrating. Every single generation convinces itself that it has reinvented what debt means. They create sophisticated language around it, calling it capital optimization or strategic leverage or financial efficiency, as if new terminology changes fundamental mathematics. But strip away all the jargon, remove all the modern packaging, and what you're looking at is the same old stupidity wearing contemporary clothes. Leverage magnifies all outcomes, good and bad, and human nature absolutely guarantees that the bad outcomes will eventually appear. Not maybe, not possibly, they will appear. The only question is whether you'll survive them. The pattern repeats with such consistency that it's almost predictable. Leverage always starts the same way. Someone borrows money to accelerate their gains, and they genuinely believe they're being rational about it. They've done the math, they've considered the risks, they've convinced themselves they're different from all the people who failed before them. And for a while, it actually works. The numbers look great, the strategy seems validated, and their confidence swells dramatically. They start believing they've mastered risk itself, that they've found some edge or insight that others missed. Then reality arrives. The market sneezes. Interest rates tick up just slightly, one deal fails to perform as expected, and suddenly everything they built collapses like wet cardboard in the rain. That's not bad luck. That's arithmetic meeting reality. That's the inevitable consequence of building on a foundation that was never solid to begin with. The impact isn't just financial devastation. It's the psychological destruction of watching your carefully constructed confidence evaporate in days or weeks. What took years to build unravels in moments, and the transformation from confident investor to desperate survivor happens so fast you barely register the transition until you're already drowning. Even brilliant people fall into this trap, and intelligence actually makes it worse because smart people are exceptional at constructing justifications for what they want to do anyway. They look at historically low interest rates and convince themselves that leverage makes sense now in ways it didn't before. But that's like saying Russian roulette is safe because the odds look favorable this particular round. The chamber still exists, the bullet is still loaded, and eventually, not possibly, but eventually, the chamber turns. And here's what people miss entirely. Leverage doesn't just destroy portfolios when things go wrong. It destroys temperament long before the actual financial collapse arrives. You cannot stay calm when a few bad weeks threaten total wipeout. You cannot think rationally when every market movement feels existential. The psychological damage happens first, and it makes you incapable of making the decisions that might actually save you. This is why the greatest wealth-building machine ever created, Berkshire Hathaway, was built with almost no debt. Not because the people running it didn't understand leverage, they understood it better than almost anyone. Not because they couldn't access cheap capital, they absolutely could. But because their goal was never about maximizing returns in favorable conditions. Their goal was surviving every possible environment, thriving in the easy times and enduring the catastrophic ones. The ability to sit completely still during market panic, to think clearly when everyone else is losing their minds, to act decisively when opportunities appear during chaos. This is the ultimate competitive advantage in investing. And it's functionally impossible when banks own your nerves, when your survival depends on market conditions cooperating with your timeline. Someone once approached me with what they thought was clever analysis, bragging about how they were borrowing at 3% to invest at 6%. The response they received cut through all the sophistication. You're earning 3% and risking 100%. Think about that arithmetic for a moment. The upside is marginal, the downside is total. Most people prefer pleasant illusions to unpleasant truths because the illusions feel comfortable and the truths demand action they're not ready to take. But leverage makes you fragile in ways that go beyond simple mathematics. It converts temporary setbacks into permanent losses. It takes situations you could have recovered from and transforms them into catastrophes you cannot survive. And here's the hidden truth about how it operates. Leverage punishes arrogance much faster than it punishes stupidity. Stupid people often avoid leverage because they don't understand it. Arrogant people embrace it because they believe they're smart enough to control it. The impact of this dynamic has destroyed more fortunes than any market crash ever could, because the destruction comes from within, from decisions made in confidence that should have been made with humility. Write in the comments, humility over arrogance. Let me tell you something that most people spend their entire lives failing to understand. The goal was never about getting rich. That's a distraction, a misleading target that sends people chasing the wrong prize. The real goal is independence. You don't want more money so you can buy more things, accumulate more possessions, or impress more people. You want more money so you can stop doing stupid things, so you can stop tolerating what shouldn't be tolerated. Stop compromising what shouldn't be compromised. Stop trading your time and dignity for survival. And nothing, absolutely nothing, is stupider than voluntarily trading your freedom for leverage. Debt whispers the most seductive lie. In finance, have it now, pay later. But later always arrives, and when it does, it collects not just the principal but compounded interest on every single day you believed the illusion of having something you couldn't actually afford. This is where the real mindset transformation needs to crystallize. Freedom doesn't come from owning more, it comes from owing less. The revelations that change lives aren't about accumulation, they're about liberation. When you don't owe anyone anything, something profound shifts in how you move through the world. You think clearly because your thoughts aren't clouded by obligation. You say no when everyone else is forced to say yes because you can afford to walk away. You ignore crowd panic during market crashes because you're not desperate, not over-leveraged, not one bad quarter away from catastrophe. People consistently underestimate this power until their independence vanishes, and only then do they realize it was like oxygen, invisible and undervalued until it's gone, and you're suffocating. The journey to real wealth requires understanding one fundamental truth that contradicts everything modern finance teaches. The best investment you'll ever make isn't in some hot stock or promising company or innovative sector. The best investment is buying back your independence, $1 of debt at a time. You cannot put a price on sleeping well at night. You cannot quantify the value of compounding wisdom under pressure rather than panic. You cannot calculate the worth of making rational decisions when someone else has a claim on your future. These are the real returns that determine the quality of your entire life, and they only become possible when you're free. Freedom beats leverage every single time, not through higher returns in favorable conditions, but through permanence in a volatile world. The impact of this choice reverberates through every decision you make, every opportunity you evaluate, every crisis you face. And what most people never grasp is that this isn't actually about money at all. It's about the kind of human being you're capable of becoming when your mind is liberated from the constant calculation of what you owe versus what you control. Write in the comments, I choose freedom. So if you've made it this far, you're clearly not someone who's satisfied with surface-level financial advice or comfortable lies. You're looking for something real, something that actually works in the messy reality of building a life worth living. And honestly, that's exactly who I create this content for. People who are willing to hear uncomfortable truths, if those truths can actually set them free. If this resonated with you, if any part of this shifted how you're thinking about debt and freedom, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Not because I need the numbers, but because there's so much more we need to talk about. Every video on this channel is designed to cut through the noise and give you practical wisdom you can actually use to build real wealth and real freedom, the kind that lasts, the kind that nobody can take away from you. And look, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me a comment saying, freedom is the goal, so I know you were here, so I know this message landed with someone who needed to hear it. Your engagement tells me what's actually helping people, what's actually making a difference. Hit that like button too if this gave you something valuable to think about. It helps more people find these conversations, and frankly, more people need to hear this before they make decisions they'll regret for decades. Now, there's a video right here that takes this further, diving into exactly how to build wealth without sacrificing your sanity or your freedom. Click and continue with me over there. Let's keep this journey going together.